The Future History of Energy and Transportation. Documenting the paradigm shift from the era of oil and internal combustion to the era of robotics. By Julian Cox. Narrated by the author with the aid of an artificial intelligence. Chapter 6. The Internet of Things. The Internet in its classical sense is a data communications network. Even with the addition of servers delivering compute power and information storage, it is not inherently productive. It is an efficiency measure. Bits and bytes can entertain, they can teach and test, they can extend the human senses to audio and video and data from all manner of sensors and of course capture, store and transmit information to facilitate communication, between people and between machines. Nevertheless, with the exception of information for its own sake, which to be clear includes the ability to educate and indoctrinate, inform and disinform, surveil and monitor ultimately the whole of human civilization, and while the term information incorporates financial transactions, even money itself, the Internet creates nothing of intrinsic value. People cannot eat it, drink it, shelter under it, clothe themselves in it, warm themselves with it, with the possible exception of the waste heat of data centers and digital currency mining operations, or move under its power. Author's note: this book is essentially a product of the classical Internet. It likely reached you via the Internet. It may help you to formulate a clearer picture of the future and so make you very much wealthier, perhaps measured in Internet cryptocurrencies, or to evade catastrophic loss of income, opportunity, net worth and whole businesses. Not financial advice, however, it is to be hoped that engaging with this work addresses the very definition of doing your own research. Nevertheless, except in the case of active participation in building the systems to multiply human productivity herein described, mere wealth transfer by superior anticipation of market trends, obtained from those destined to lose out, is a zero-sum game, minus slippage, transaction fees, procrastination and taxation. Indeed, since the outset of research into this work, which could in some ways be described as a master thesis of Tesla Incorporated, TSLA stock has gained approximately 1,600% in value at this update, for reasons clearly, accurately and actionably provided. Yet even an information advantage on this scale, unless deployed to take action in the real economy of energy and matter, could be considered exploitative or life-changing, but not net productive. The term, information is power, is true subject to a number of caveats. Information alone could be considered predatory. It can instill confusion and fear leading to error and paralysis. The inverse of insider trading, outsider trading, the business model of the mass media, creates an insider advantage by disseminating broad disinformation, such as consumer brand advertising or television news narratives, that seeks to link an audience's emotions to selective subject matter. There is a form of power in that. Information alone can probe, track and anticipate prey, opportunity, consumers, voters. Of course, information in the form of research, education and design is vital to guiding the creation of useful things. Language including poetry, intangible art including music can be beautiful, but in the world of gross energy and matter, information alone is powerless to create anything useful without constructive action. What no book can do, absent commensurate action, is to power so much as a single incremental reading lamp nor so much as the backlight of an Internet device. Absent a hard copy, one cannot even burn it. Arguably all of the value of the classical Internet rests on cost and time savings, where savings can be found against the benchmark of the physical economy, for example the elimination of printing and postage from the critical path of reading a book. Of not having to do something tedious, laborious, energy or materials intensive in the physical world to catalog, collaborate, search, process and communicate data. One can think of the classical Internet as an immense smart grid, albeit limited to the ability to transmit only enough power to change the state of a networked computer over distance. What then if the ability to project power and purpose over distance wasn't limited to a few milliwatts sufficient to alter the state of silicon but ultimately terawatts, and with it, the ability to move gigatons intelligently? Such as a networked fleet of autonomous vehicles and networked robotics more generally beyond that, including a smart grid of generative assets to power them. The IoT in these terms is about adding to the sum of all works through the extension of the Internet, to connected physical agents operating in the domain of energy and matter, in other words, robotics for real productivity gains, actually producing more energy and work done society-wide, per unit of human time and labor input, rather than simply addressing inefficiencies in the real economy. Such revolutionary industrial products start to get interesting when the internet itself is capable of dispatching and routing physical objects and large amounts of energy and onwards to mining, processing, assembling, and routing machines to supply the machines, either at the touch of a button, or under the command of autonomous systems. It is not even the limit of the Internet of Things to consider a supply of autonomous labor in the same terms as a supply of hot and cold running water, as something approaching the far opposite extreme of labor efficiency, from the historical necessity to trek to a river with 2 metal buckets and chop wood for a log fire to heat one of them. When a person or an autonomous system can send an entire robot or fleet thereof and not just an electronic message, then we have ourselves an industrial revolution that is beyond oil and beyond the internet too. We enter the era of robotics, of the smart grid and the autonomous EV, from the massive ship to the miniature drone and the humanoid robot in between, and that rabbit hole goes right to the bottom, revolutionizing everything from food production and distribution to heat, light and recursive power for robotic industry, resulting in reductions to the cost of living and improvements in human abundance that the oil era could only dream of delivering. These are amplifications of human agency in the real world of matter and energy, akin to the impact of the internet on the virtual world of data and ideas, that will render the transition from the poverty of the horse to the relative wealth of oil and internal combustion, a most extraordinarily quaint and trivial step on the ladder of civilization. A common fallacy would appear to revolve around the presupposition of machines addressing the market for human labor currently undertaken in society, as if this defines the whole opportunity space and the sum of all works, for which there might be a market, irrespective of cascading affordability. This was clearly not the case when transitioning from horses to engines, where the sum of all works undertaken with engines throughout global transport, domestic living and industry on a daily basis, vastly exceeds the sum of all works undertaken with the aid of horses, more than likely exceeding in a single year the sum of all works undertaken, in the whole multi-thousand-year history of human interactions with horses. The expansion of works that are economically feasible with a supply of intelligently self-guided machine labor, uncapped by supply and affordability of skilled human operators, defines the opportunity space available to the IoT. The opportunity to undertake incremental work and to capture and direct incremental energy towards outcomes desirable to people, is not a laughing matter, to put it mildly. Far from displacing the current workforce to poverty, this is an event that points to the leveling up of billions of new customers, for goods and services increasingly distant in quantity, quality and variety from the basic necessities of subsistence. Meanwhile, if the competition to robots is terrified of robots, that would seem to be a clear market signal to build and invest in companies and to seek employment, in the value chain from energy and mining to software directed at building, owning and managing, lots and lots of robots. The economic opportunity involved is orders of magnitude greater than the global economy at the time of writing. That's plenty to be getting on with for the next few decades, before grasping for mass redundancy funded by a privileged few, deciding who is useful to them and who they might suffer to carry on financial life support via the tax code, in the form of a universal basic income, or worrying where the next paycheck after building the machines, to build the machines, to serve billions of underserved humans will be coming from. In the absence of a sentient AI dominating the will of humanity, or for that matter a tiny clique of oligarchs, to determine what it wants and desires to be done for its own purposes, the truly unique property of a person or an organization like a company, a nation or a civilization is to imagine the future and to want and to decide that something should happen, for the benefit of humans. Programming a machine to do it or even programming a network of machines to figure out how to do it, and then do it, does not break the chain of command from the human will to the task performed. Literally everything else besides the will of the individual, or the will of any of the desirable decision-making constructs of mankind, we can afford to delegate. The more we do, the more powerful we become as conscious beings to shape our destiny until, at the outer limit, we are able to shape the future of the physical universe by the power of thought. The IoT is the next giant leap in that direction. Is this fanciful? No. Eminently practical, and from an economic standpoint, it is swimming downstream. 3 practical and practicable ingredients. 1. Human toil eliminating technology to the limit. Pursuing desirable goals and ambitions, including the ambition to achieve self-expression and societal significance through human recognizable achievement, is work by some definitions and not others. For example, working to become a leading gymnast, artist, thinker, or business person is hard work that is quite distinct from hard work laboring repetitively to replicate the functions of a washing machine, or ultimately any machine to which labor can be satisfactorily delegated. 2. An Internet of Things to connect the conscious will to the activities of machines and organizations of machines. Again to the limit, until the full cycle of industry from energy and materials gathering to production and deployment is automated at the touch of a button or by any interface that detects conscious desire for action or outcomes. 3. Final ingredient, ordinary time in sufficient quantity to reach the limit of 1 and 2. Fear that a tiny handful of giant corporations monopolize the means of production while the jobless roam the streets and millions in far-flung places starve, is far more symptomatic of centralized oil, gas and utility power than it is of the Internet. Similarly, the Internet of Things will instead broaden opportunities and lower the barrier to entry to participate as an owner in the physical and energy economy, just like the virtual Internet, or information economy before it, broadened access to the tools to create and operate websites and podcasts and so on. In the here and now of the very near future, 2021 to 2025 time frame, the ability to own an autonomous productive asset such as a solar array and some intelligent grid storage, as well as the ability to own the productive asset of one or more autonomous electric vehicle, and robots more generally capable of performing useful labor, will be absolutely profound in exactly these terms. Not for all but for many orders of magnitude more owners than currently exist in the supply of energy and transportation today, where electricity and fuel is overwhelmingly consumed by those with no share at all in the assets that produce it, and very few road vehicle owners as a percentage of the total, are in a position to supply transport beyond their own consumption, none unless they supply the corresponding human labor. As soon as driverless vehicle autonomy is authorized to provide transport for fares, owning as little as one, or a small fleet of Tesla Model 3s, Ys, or S and X for that matter, will provide the basis for a healthy income, even if loan financed. This will inevitably set a lot of folk to thinking about what can be done to make a small business with a physical agent, such as a robotic car, just as it was the case with a virtual agent, such as an e-commerce website. It is not a giant leap from here to let there be light, machines fill the desert with street lamps. How about something really profound? Let there be an ocean, a stable and regulated 21% oxygen 0.00002% CO2 atmosphere and a vegetation, precipitation cycle on that planet, over there, Mars, or over here, on planet Earth. This is just a function of net whole of system ability of technology to enhance the power of human beings, converging on infinity. Where infinite power is defined as the useful work output of machines, divided by zero human effort, expended to build, power, supply and maintain the machines. Ultimately, the power to do any of these things is simply the ability to capture some of the energy that there is and to channel it by way of an assemblage of materials to accomplish useful tasks. With automation, it doesn't make a difference if there are thousands or millions of small automated steps in the physical world between bare rock and a fully functional city or a fully terraformed world, any more than it matters that there are thousands or millions of small steps in between moving a joystick and watching a computer game character perform actions on screen. Again, at the limit, and there are many giant leaps for mankind between here and there, the IoT, the Internet of Energy and autonomous agents renders manipulating the physical world, and ultimately the universe, indistinguishable from manipulating a gamescape. We could think about prepping for the deep future by sending terraforming bootloaders all over the universe, factories capable of building the machines to make factories, to land on candidate moons and planets and get to work mining and processing the materials, to assemble a first additional solar panel, or star panel, and the first new machine, and to take it step by millions of steps and hundreds or thousands of years, from there on up until humans were ready to take the trip. The most important payload of such a device would be intelligence and goal-oriented instructions to act, not energy. Whenever there is a star nearby, energy is easy. As Carl Sagan put it, a truly advanced civilization could capture the energy of its nearby star. Well, that doesn't have to be so fanciful so long as we can content ourselves, at least initially, with routing a small slice of the many terawatt-hours that arrive on the Earth every day, through useful work, before dissipating it to heat. Further discussion of the IoT is referenced in Part 7 of A Hierarchy of Efficiency and in discussion of carbon tax. Practical and immediate steps are described in the chapter, The Future History of Energy and Transportation.